Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Saints Row Gat Out of Hell. It's a $20 expandalone for Saints Row 4, or any Saints Row really, considering that you don't need any of the Saints Rows to play it. Let's dive right in, and let's talk a little bit about it. It's by both Volition and High Voltage. High Voltage have done a number of things. They've been involved in a lot of porting, and it seems that they were also involved in the creation of Gat Out of Hell, which I suppose you could consider to be Saints Row 4's Far Cry Blood Dragon? But simultaneously, it's in a very weird spot because Saints Row 4 was already kind of strange to begin with, so saying, hey, it's the weird spin-off doesn't really work when they already had a weird spin-off. It was called the entirety of Saints Row 4. But, well, there you go. Such is the way of it nonetheless. So, welcome to hell, quite literally. This is where you are. You play as either Johnny Gat or Kinsey. You can play either of them. They both do exactly the same thing, so it's purely cosmetic choice. And you can switch between them at will or play in co-op. And you will run around hell attempting to rescue the President of the United States, of course, who has been kidnapped by Satan for Lord knows what reason, in a very, very silly set of cutscenes at the beginning. And you will do so by completing various quests, causing havoc, and all that good stuff. So really, it's very similar to the other Saints Row games, except it throws off a lot of the pretension of said games. It stops really pretending to be anything more than that. In fact, the game sort of embraces the activities wholeheartedly and even makes jokes at their expense. If you do the Rampage activity, it's going to tell you that blowing up fences is a very valuable way of earning points, which is absolutely true, it is. And it was one of the weird foibles of the Saints Row series when you did any of the Rampage activities. As you can also see, you have a pair of wings, so you can fly around pretty damn early. It does give you hell-themed superpowers this time around. And they're pretty fun to use, honestly. They're relatively similar to the superpowers that you had previously, but you do get them a lot quicker. It feels like a condensed experience compared to Saints Row 4, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We've seen quite a few games go down this route recently. We've had things like First Light for Infamous, and of course before that we ended up having, I believe, it was called Circus of Blood, I think. And then of course we have things like Far Cry Blood Dragon. They've gone down this idea of taking the existing mechanics, putting them in a different setting, putting a different spin on it, and saying, alright, well, now what we're going to do is we're going to give you the same kind of experience with a different twist, and we're going to condense it. So we're going to try and minimize the wasting of time that goes on. They get you into this very, very quickly after a cutscene and a pretty cool storybook kind of thing. Alright, I need to work this over right here. And then you just get right into it, and the whole point of this game is shoot Satan in the face. That simple, really. Just shoot him in the face. Nothing too complicated about that. But in order to get Satan to come out, you've got to do a bunch of stuff which will bother him enough to actually get him onto the field. So that involves numerous activities and making allies within hell, including people like Shakespeare and Blackbeard, who will give you a bunch of very interesting power-ups indeed. And, I mean, that's the gist of it. If you've played Saints Row, then, frankly, you already know what to expect from Gat Out of Hell. Except they abandoned the whole gangster thing pretty much completely. So if you were hoping for a little bit more of the gangster theme, it's gone. I think this is the thing that you've unfortunately got to accept now about the Saints Row series, is that it was barely a gangster game come Saints Row 3. It's been losing its gangster cred for a while. Saints Row 4 was full-on superhero nonsense, and then Gat Out of Hell has barely any gang stuff in whatsoever outside of references to the previous games, which are funny, don't get me wrong. But if you were looking for something that is not a superhero game set in hell, well, you're not going to find it here. This is exactly what Gat Out of Hell is. For some people, that's going to be a problem. For others, that's not going to be an issue. I don't really have a problem with Saints Row tossing off its gangster theme, at least for a while, but I have a feeling that with Gat Out of Hell, it's kind of got to the point where I would quite like it to maybe ground itself back in reality just a little bit. Just a bit, not too much, doesn't have to go crazy. But I think it's jumped the shark now enough times to justify maybe going back with Saints Row 5 and saying, alright, we're going to ground it. Maybe set it somewhere in the past, maybe set it in the 60s or the 70s or something like that, and go back to the whole gangster thing. I think it's about the time that that would work. But outside of that, what is it? Well, it's an open-world sandbox nonsense game. It's something of a theme park. It's got a lot of different rides. It's got a lot of different activities for you to do. And the game marks them fairly simply on the map, so it's not too difficult to really find them. And it encourages you to do them. In fact, it gives you a hell-themed tutorial every time explaining why this will annoy Satan and why you should probably do it. So, no craziness there. In fact, it embraces the game nature of it. It doesn't even try to hide it in any way. It explains it in a very... I don't like the word gamey. I think it's a pretty terrible term that doesn't really describe things all that well, but I can't think of a better way to do it. It doesn't try and contrive a reason for you doing all of this stuff. It's just said, look, it's a video game. You need the points. Go bloody well do it. It's that simple. And honestly, it's actually kind of refreshing that it embraces that idea, because games like Watch Dogs, and of course to a lesser extent GTA, really do try and hide the activities in some semblance of common sense within the world. And that is not what this game does at all. It just says, look, the activities are here because this is a world full of activities. Like, you don't need any more reason for doing what you're doing other than it's fun. That is as far as it goes. And I can have a certain degree of respect for that, no doubt whatsoever. Now, weapons. There are a few interesting ones, I've got to say. The Diamond Sting is what I'm saving up for right now. As you can see, look at that. That looks fairly amusing. Propels diamonds at an incredible rate of fire, turning victims into a shower of wealth. I would love that. I need to actually save up for it. This one fires bees, because why the hell not, and can be upgraded. This one is a shotgun that fires 5 stakes at once and can also stake people to the wall. It's really quite a fantastic weapon. There's a decent selection of hell-themed weapons and also regular stuff if you're more interested in that. And you can also, I believe, get weapon skins as well for this stuff. Although, as to where you can find them, I don't know yet. I did find them in the tooltips, so I assume that they have them. See, there don't seem to be any clothes shops, so if you're looking to customize your avatar, well, that simply isn't here. You either play Kinsey or you play Gat, and they look the way that they are expected to look. So nothing really out of the ordinary there. If you're looking for some customization, then you won't really find it. But I suppose it is to some degree to be expected, because we are looking at a game which is, as I mentioned earlier, a condensed version of something that already exists. And that's, to me, fine. I think you can get away with that once, at any rate. It's effectively DLC, but it is expand-alone content. So have I enjoyed it so far? Well, yes. I mean, I've enjoyed it in the same way that I enjoyed Saints Row 4, really. I like the fact that it lets you into the action very quickly. But one thing that I was not expecting to enjoy was actually the storyline. The writing is surprisingly funny. There's some pretty damn good characters in it. It helps that they've thrown some historical figures in there and put a hell-themed twist on it. Shakespeare is a DJ, for example, which is reasonably amusing. And there's also a musical involved in it, which is really well written and actually well delivered, which I did not expect at all to enjoy. There's also this nice little storybook going on, which explains the story as it goes in a rather whimsical fashion with the usual Saints Row smut and humor layered on for good measure. And it works. It actually does work. In fact, I found that to be very enjoyable, which, as I said, I'm a little bit surprised by, because I was really just expecting to have a silly little open-world adventure, and then I found that the storyline is sufficient parody to actually be enjoyable. And it didn't have to be. I think they could have phoned it in a lot more than they did, so I really do appreciate that they put a little bit more effort into that, I've got to say. It's quite surprising. But outside of that, though, it's hard to ignore that this really is Saints Row. You've got the same old activities, they just happen to be hell-themed in some respects. There's a torment fraud, for instance, which is the same as the insurance fraud physics-based minigame, only you get years, like, well, actually centuries, taken off the husks curse in hell or whatever. And you're actually working for a demonic lawyer when you do it. But the vast majority of the minigames are very, very similar to stuff that already exists within Saints Row. So if you've had your fill of that, then this isn't going to convince you otherwise. And I don't think it was ever really meant to.
This is bad for my OCD.
We're going to have a quick look at the options menu. So what I was quite surprised by is that this game actually ran a lot better than Saints Row 4 did on launch. Saints Row 4 had some performance problems. It may be because it's on a smaller map, or it may simply be because it's just better optimized than Saints Row 4 was, but I had no performance problems right out of the gate with this. I had a couple of minor issues, like if I have my flight stick plugged in, it assumes I wish to play Saints Row with a flight stick. It is extremely mistaken in that regard. That would be quite silly, but I don't really view that as too big a problem, because let's be honest, most people don't have X52s plugged in. I'm currently playing with the controller because I have a sticky key on my keyboard, so I don't really want to make too much noise with that. But the keyboard and mouse controls work absolutely fine. I didn't notice any obvious mouse acceleration or any particular keyboard problems. If we head over to controls, then you will see that you will be able to rebind pretty much all of your buttons, and you even have a secondary function on the button as well, which I absolutely love. So they have put that in there, and I am very happy with that. You can rebind pretty much all of that stuff, which is great. Inversion is available, mouse sensitivity sliders that go very, very high. So if you have, say, mobility issues, then this might be good for you, because maybe you want the higher mouse sensitivity so that you can spin around with a minimal effort. And you've got things like 3 different kinds of vehicle camera snap options and gamepad options as well. A lot of them, in fact, more so than you would usually get with gamepads. Like, you got things like crouch toggle and aim sensitivity, as well as inversions and multiple control schemes, as you can see. So that's actually not too shabby at all. I still like the idea of being able to fully rebind the gamepad, and a lot of games really don't give you that option, but I think that for the most part, they've done a really good job here with the control menu. There's quite a lot to see. Not really too much to find here in the gameplay options. If we head over to display, you'll notice that it has pretty much everything that you could ask for here. Resolutions go all the way up to 4K. You can even select primary and secondary monitor, which is a nice feature, which is not really in too many games. Windowed and borderless window is available. VSync off, of course, because I'm using G-Sync. Don't want to be using that. And then you've got your full set of presets, which run absolutely fine. I turned it up to ultra, played it. It runs at above 60 frames per second. I believe the game caps out at 120, from what I can tell. So, I mean, that's a tiny, tiny little niggle for those that happen to run 144 Hz monitors, but that's not really a problem that most people will be considering. So, options-wise, things are looking pretty good, and separate audio sliders for everything here, and you can turn voice chat off. It does default as always on, so if you're playing co-op, you might want to turn that off immediately. So nothing really to complain about in terms of performance, which is kind of to be expected, because, I mean, let's be frank, the game isn't really too much of a looker. You've got reasonably low texture quality, and honestly, it's the same look as Saints Row 4, really. They've reused a lot of assets. They haven't really improved an awful lot. I will say that the pyrotechnics and actual effects look particularly good, but the overall model quality, even on the main characters, isn't particularly fantastic, so I can't say I'm all that impressed by that. It does look a couple of months, well, a couple of years out of date, really, and there is some pop-in, although it's nowhere near as extreme as other games, as you can probably see right here, so it's not too terrible. You will see some terrain pop-in, but the car view distance is reasonable, and you're not going to be flying along and then suddenly running into a building because it just spawned in, so that's always nice to see. Outside of that, there really isn't a great deal to say about it. If you're looking for more Saints Row, then this is exactly what that is. They haven't really improved it to a huge degree. It does pretty much the same thing as Saints Row 4 does, just in a condensed setting and, of course, in a different environment. The hellscape is perhaps not really used all that well. It does have some creative design in terms of the size of the buildings and things like that, and the fact that there are just lava rivers everywhere is quite cool, and there's hell-themed parts of the world which are just interpretations of our world, which I do kind of like, and the hell-themed corporations in particular, as well as the characters that you can find in there, are particularly enjoyable. So it's all a good degree of fun, but there's nothing really within Gat Out of Hell that is blowing my mind outside of the musical elements. As I said, the writing in the musical is absolutely hilarious. Big fan of that. Absolutely love that. But outside of that, it is the same old Saints Row experience. You're going to be asked to do a lot of activities. If you don't like the activities, then you're probably going to get pretty damn miserable. Collect stuff, get upgrades. In fact, we can have a look at the upgrades right now. If I have a little bit of a gripe with it, it's that they really could have been a bit more creative with the upgrades. It's a lot of fairly generic upgrades, such as stamina increase. Increase the health of the husks that will help you. Decrease or increase your notoriety decay. Get more health. Get more pickups. Get more ammo for weapons. It takes a while to even unlock something fun like, say, dual-wield pistols. which I would have liked a lot earlier. I think they could have done a lot better with the abilities, and there are only 4 arcane abilities that you can unlock as well, if I recall correctly. 4 actives anyway, and then there's a bunch of passives. You got Blast, Summon, Stomp, and then a 4th one, which I haven't actually got yet. Summons brings a bunch of imps in. Blast, it turns things to stone, although you can also get different elements as well, which will cause it to do different things, which is reasonably enjoyable. We're going to grab a couple of different upgrades for that. There's nothing wrong with the powers per se, and Stomp in particular is very, very satisfying to use. But if you're looking for something original, which is like a really new twist on the superpowers theme that Saints Row has been doing since 4, well, you're not going to find it. No. They've done what they need in order to differentiate it somewhat, I think, from the original. But it is ultimately still a $20 expander load, and that is maybe the main point, isn't it? You've got this weird situation where, for other games, I've been encouraging this expand-alone model, especially for Blood Dragon, which I think is one of the prime examples of doing it right, because you're able to take a theme and go absolutely insane with it. The thing is, Saints Row 4 already went insane with it, so Gat Out of Hell actually, in many ways, feels less crazy, especially considering they're able to do a lot more in the computer-generated environment. So, if this is supposed to be the expand-alone where they completely jump the shark, well, that was the last game. So, I'm not really 100% sure kind of where they're going with that. It's weird, because Gat Out of Hell almost feels a little bit more mundane than 4, which it really it shouldn't. Like, it absolutely should not. That's just a very weird situation, isn't it? But it's hard to deny that Saints Row is still a very enjoyable game, and Gat Out of Hell does exactly what it says on the tin. It does what I would have expected Gat Out of Hell to do. And it's fun enough when you play it. The activities are still as enjoyable as ever. The gunplay is still as fun as ever. You get superpowers very early, which is certainly enjoyable. And it's a little bit of an open world romp. That's what it is. It doesn't really feel phoned in. The level of quality is, I would say, about the same as Saints Row 4. There's nothing too obvious there, though again, I would have liked to see a big improvement in asset quality, and, well, we just don't get that. But at least we do get a game which runs very, very well and doesn't seem to have any obvious PC problems, so there is that. And it's $20. You can't ignore the price tag. If this was a $60 game, it would be getting a lot more condemnation, but it does what it set out to do, which is to be a condensed expand-alone in a different world with a few different weapons, some familiar characters, and some fun activities, and a relatively, in fact, surprisingly enjoyable storyline. And I can appreciate that. I can. I really can appreciate that. And if what you're looking for is more Saints Row with a gun that fires bees, this is exactly what that game is. I don't think there's any real in-depth critique to be fired at it, honestly. It's honest about what it does. It's honest almost to a fault. This is just more Saints Row with more activities. And it's going to tell you how to do the activities, it's going to tell you why the activities are fun, and then you're going to go do it, and then you're going to go run through tanks, and everything's going to be an enjoyable little romp for you. That simple, really. Saints Row Gat Out of Hell is a simple concept, and it executes it fairly well. And it's $20. What else could you need to know? My name's been TotalBiscuit. Taking a look at Saints Row Gat Out of Hell. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next time.